What the heck was that? I just finished beating Resident Evil Village, and I need to talk about it. Now, this video is going to be completely filled with spoilers of the story, some gameplay elements, and some stuff about this game that just completely blew my mind. If you want some spoiler-free thoughts, I did do a gigantic review, just short and sweet. I love this game, but I want to talk about some of the finer details of the plot that have just completely melted my cranium. What's up, gamers? Dreamcastguy here, and it's time to just do a bit of an angry rant about some of the choices they've made in Resident Evil Village. Now, to start things off, let's begin with Lady D herself, Lady Deme. Now, in all the marketing, they kept pretending that this was going to be a major enemy, like the fact that there is this 9-foot-tall vampire lady continually hunting the main character Ethan. It seemed like this was going to be something that was a bigger deal. She is basically the first boss. There's a couple mini bosses before her, but by the time you fight her, she transforms into this gigantic dragon-like thing, which is pretty crazy, but it really sets the tone for the game itself, which is very purposefully trying to defy expectations. And I'm a bit conflicted by this, because I think that Lady D's design was awesome. The fact that she is just so, well, menacing, the fact that you can make somebody that's so gorgeous and yet so daunting, it is a delicate balance. And the fact that she turns into a gigantic gooey creature that flies around, I don't have a problem with that. It's just weird that in this game, there is some stuff that feels extremely final, and I wish it was a bit more vague. Like, these characters just die so abruptly. Everybody in this game just shows up, is introduced, you go to their level, and then you kill them. And it kind of made it where the game itself feels very, very breakneck pace, which is good, but Lady D herself, I mean, I kind of wanted to see other stuff about her. I wanted to see her interact with the other people more. I wanted to see a chance to see, why this character is hundreds of years old and how she exists. Like, I feel like there's so much lore and exploration they could have done with this character. But this also really carries over to the other characters as well, because I think that the designs of these bosses is fantastic. I like that each person kind of has their own weird elements to them, from the haunting puppet boss to something like the gigantic gooey fish we fight. It's impressive to me that they managed to capture these different experiences within the same game, and not just by adding in different monsters to it. But this does bring me to something I definitely want to talk about, which is the robots. Okay, so these things, I guess I have to call them zombie androids. Now, this isn't just some crazy term. Like, in the game itself, I decided to try and explore everything. One of my favorite parts about Resident Evil is all the notes. The little hidden pieces of lore, from documents to diaries, are something that I find personally to be very delectable. So I found all these research notes talking about how they made the robots. And, I mean, literally, if you look at the schematics and stuff, these are literally shambling corpses inside of robot suits. They're able to shoot lasers and fly and have these like freaking Tony Stark thermal reactors on their chest, which works as the weak point. Now, here's just kind of my thoughts on this. I consider these just creatures to be spoilers, so I didn't put them in the main video, but the fact that there's like these robots, it feels very different from the rest of Resident Evil. Now, let's just be clear, Resident Evil's done a lot of crazy stuff in the past. People have been able to transform and turn into gigantic spiders and then just instantly go back to being a normal human. Like, they've done some pretty insane stuff, but something about this feels like a weird touch. Like, the fact that these are just made of rusted metal and seemingly created in this factory in the middle of nowhere with seemingly no other technology about, it just seems like this weird logical leap that doesn't really connect to the rest of Resident Evil 8. Now, part of this comes down to the fact that I love Heisenberg. I think the other creatures are cool. The fact that we see like one of the parts of this game that I feel like is something that really kind of impressed me was the whole House Benevito, where basically it's like the puppet house. This entire section of the game, if you actually pay attention, there is zero gunplay. You never take your gun out a single time. You solve every puzzle, you dodge every monster, and then eventually you defeat the boss without firing a single shot. And I like the fact that they managed to make this part of the game that feels slower, more methodical, and honestly, it feels more like environmental terror, which, let's just face it, Resident Evil doesn't do that much. Typically, the Resident Evil games either do body horror with like gigantic, horrible, macabre creations, or they do shock horror by having you try and fight a bunch of monsters at once. The fact that they managed to do this like environmental horror and build up tension, that to me was incredibly crazy. But now let's talk about the gigantic twist. The reason I'm making this video is because, secondary spoiler warning, Ethan is dead. Not only is he dead, he's been dead for years. Like, this is insanity. So about halfway through the game, or maybe 3/4 of the way through the game, randomly you're fighting and suddenly your heart just gets ripped out of your chest. The big bad boss of Village decides to show up and turn you into a donut, ripping out your insides, and then suddenly it's revealed that, well, guess what? That doesn't matter. You just come to life again. You do a little spirit walk, and suddenly you're just revived. And it's revealed that you actually died at the very beginning of Resident Evil 7. Now, to me, this is a shocking revelation, but it kind of makes sense in context, because when you think back to Resident Evil 7, Ethan gets hurt a lot. He's thrown down mine shafts, he's falling off ladders, he has limbs constantly being chopped off, and then you just casually pick them up and reattach. To me, this is where things started to feel different. You could tell that they were going to take the character of Ethan in a style that we haven't seen before in the Resident Evil universe, but having him be basically an unbeknownst bioweapon, the fact that he's this sleeper agent for the mold, because yes, it's confirmed he is a mold monster, this was a crazy twist. But then it has the additional elements that, honestly, part of what shocked me about this is that it makes me like Ethan so much more as a character, because after he discovers that he is a mold monster, he continues to do his mission. By actually defeating the last boss, Mother Miranda, it's essentially revealed that Mother Miranda is the queen of the mold. All the mold across the entire world originates here. All of its agents, from its mind control properties to its abilities to transform people and stuff, all of that starts right here. So if Mother Miranda dies and you destroy the big nexus, that means that Ethan himself is going to cease to exist. And he still does it. In order to save his daughter, he dies. I have to just say this, the scene of him dying, the choice that he makes, his final speech just saying, "Take care of Rose," and taking off his jacket and giving it to her, that hit me, man. Like, in general, I thought that Ethan was always a pretty decent character. It was cool to see him just running and gunning and stuff. I like a guy that will just, charge into danger to try and do the right thing. But the way they made him die was absolutely glorious. Now, you may be thinking, well, perhaps he'll come back. Maybe they're going to revive him. Well, two things. First, the screen straight up says the father's story is done, so it seems like he is permadead, and then they show a flash forward to the distant future where now Rose is a grown-up, and suddenly she's here just visiting Ethan's grave. It's also hinted that she has some sort of special powers. It seems like the whole reason people are so obsessed with Rose as a baby is that maybe because Ethan is infected with the mold and he got Mia pregnant, he's shooting some very special sauce up inside her. Like, look, I don't know how to phrase it. I'm not meaning to be graphic, but it seems like maybe they made a super baby. This is some like Spider-Man logic where suddenly you just get a little bit of the gooiness in your bloodstream and you get magical abilities with it. Now, it's already been confirmed that we're getting a Resident Evil 9, which is pretty obvious because, of course, Resident Evil just to make so much money, but I always kind of assumed that this was going to be the trilogy of Ethan. I kind of assumed that Resident Evil 7 sold like crazy. Resident Evil 8 seems to be off to a very explosive start, so why not go straight into Resident Evil 9, carry him forward? But I guess not. I think that they're going to take us maybe to the story of Rose instead. This game in general was really good, but something that really stood out to me that I couldn't talk about in my review either was definitely that section playing as Chris. It seems like horror games in general like to try and remove power from the player, making you weak or defenseless or just not have a lot of defense. Like, part of the fear comes from the fact that you know that you could die at any freaking second. So getting a chance to pick up the military trained skills of Chris and just mowing down tons and tons and tons of werewolves after fighting them for all the hours leading up to this was so incredibly satisfying. I also like the fact that it's really cool that we're getting a chance to revisit Chris after everything else we've seen in this world, after we've learned about the fact that Mother Miranda can be a shapeshifter and just take any role she wants. It's cool to just see somebody show up and handle some business. Also, if you pay attention very closely, there's a line by Heisenberg when he turns into his gigantic robot form where he actually insults Chris by calling him the boulder punching bastard, which I absolutely love, love, love. The story in general is the one part of this that kind of threw me off, mostly because these are a little bit of surprises, but also just the fact that they're going purely out into magic, the fact that people are flying, the fact that people are just teleporting, the fact that the daughters are able to like turn into bees and phase through walls walls and stuff. Like, Resident Evil to me has always been fun because it's been the science of scare. They've seemingly mastered this almost mathematical process of going from the idea of having something like a gigantic organization like Umbrella, these evil scientists creating stuff and then kind of just taking over the world in the process. I liked all the lore we've built up to this point, and I'm still sticking with it, but this just seems like if they start introducing straight up magic, people who are able to just teleport and fly and stuff, I don't know, this seems like a bit of a leap. I'm still on board, but I liked when things were a bit more grounded. And I say that even though there was like El Gigante in Resident Evil frickin' 4. The games have been ridiculous, but they've never been magic. I don't know, maybe they'll figure out a way to make this all make sense, and as long as it's scary, I guess I'm still hyped. Give me more monsters, give me more bullets, give me more reasons to pull the trigger, and I guess I'm still going to show up day frickin' 1. But what did you think? Have you had a chance to play Resident Evil Village, and have you beat it? That is the #1 question, because I guess at this point, if you watch the video, I've spoiled all of it. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all, and keep dreaming. When she ripped out Ethan's heart, I was sitting there like, is this allowed? Because, games like to try and trick you, but that was brutal. Thanks so much for watching that video. If you want to see something else, you can always click this link to see what I put up last, or, subscribe and see what's coming up next. Also, I promise that whatever I do, it'll try not to suck.